Hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you all like it, please like and subscribe, and hope you all enjoy it. Have a great rest of the day.
And this lady here, it's a forensic reconstruction. They used her skeleton and then did measurements, and from that they made this. Well, here he is now building it, making that forensic reconstruction.
Okay. Now, to my understanding is, I guess how they discovered the Windover people is that, correct me if I'm wrong, you might have more details and you might be able to say it in a more detailed way, but to my understanding is that they found it, I guess, on accident.
Yeah.
They were using an excavator to dig out a particular area, which happened to be a swampy area.
Right.
And they uncovered what appeared to be...
They were going to put a road in.
Yeah,
across this area, and they were going to build houses. And so they were getting close to this edge of a pond, and the soil was real soft, so they were going to take that soft soil out and put some hard-packed soil. When the operator of the machine came up with what he thought looked like round stones. Well, there ain't no round stones in Florida.
Crazy.
So he stopped the machine and got off to look at them, and they were looking back at him. They were human skulls.
That must have been scary.
So he stopped what he was doing. He got a hold of his boss. His boss got the police. The police realized that these bones were ancient. It wasn't a crime scene. And so they wound up bringing in an archaeologist from the university or from Florida State. And they realized they'd already unearthed a lot of human remains, but they just looked like sticks all mixed in with the muck that they were pulling out of those holes. And so they wound up putting 130 well points around the pond. There's a mural over here that shows you this mural. You see that white PVC out there in the distance?
Oh yeah, right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and 130 wells they've drilled around the pond, and then they hooked it all to a big pump and started sucking the water out of the soil. Once the water in the soil went down, then the water in the pond went down, and then they were able to go in and gently start removing the soil. But they had to watch the pH in this soil, because if they got it too dry, the bones would just crumble. They would just disintegrate. So they had to keep moisture in it, but not sloshing around in water,
Yeah, and so you got to be really careful.
Of course, now, from my understanding, the laws changed to where they wouldn't have never been able to do this today. You wouldn't be able to go take anything out of there now. But at the time, there was the law against it, and so they were able to do that. Now, this is the way that they were buried. You see, the lilies would be floating, so this would be water, and they would wade out about knee deep. They would pull back the soil, and they would wrap their dead in a woven material and put them in a fetal position and lay them down in the bottom of the water, and then they would use sticks like this to hold them down, and that's to keep them from floating back up. Now the thing was, as they began to dig, they found a grave, and then they dug down below the grave and found another grave. So what would happen is that someone would bury their dead, and hundreds of years later, someone would come back to bury their dead, and the sticks have rotted away, and the leaves and the dust had settled in the pond and covered over the grave, so there's no sign of a grave, so they buried their dead on top of them. And so on, and so on. And they believe these people were coming back to this pond and burying their dead for over 1,000 years.
Now supposedly this might be wrong when I say this though, but I've looked online that there was supposedly, findings dating back further, like now, or like 8,000, 10,000.
Yeah, 7,000 and 8,000 is all that I'm privy of. Yeah.
Okay.
In this pond, in this area.
In this area, okay. So it's about 7,000, 8,000 at most. Okay. I know it's really hard to kind of date them.
Yeah.
In some cases, from what I've heard too.
They had a different. They had it done like a couple of different times, maybe even 3 times that they had it done, and each time it come back about the same thing, about in that ballpark, 7,000 to 8,000.
Okay. Well, that's really fascinating. I mean, I'm sure that the area, had changed and stuff. Though how the water moved through that area, and during that time period, do they have any documentation in that regard, as far as
No,
how?
it was just a pond. It was just, it was just a low spot that the pond was there. And, as they would bury their dead and the leaves would fall into the pond would get, just rise.
Bigger and bigger and all
Yeah.
that stuff. That's so interesting. It's, I mean, one could only wonder. But
Now they found in the graves, they found that those weaves that they had over them, they found the patterns. This is what the material looked like. And when they first found it, they couldn't even pick it up because it would just fall apart in their hands. And so what they did is they picked them up with soil and put them in boxes and saved it that way. Then later, I was told that someone came up with some kind of a chemical that they could take that material and put it in an alclave and put a vacuum on it and inject this chemical into that alclave, and it would be absorbed in the material. And for the first time, they were able to actually pick it up and hold it. It was, made it so they could pick it up. But they studied the weaves, and there was 5 different patterns that they found. So it was like different families had a little different twist on the way they did their weaves.
stitching stuff.
Kind of, somebody says kind of like the Scottish that does the kilts.
Yeah,
Each pattern means something different.
Yeah, each family had their own. It's crazy how that worked out. Preservation, and I'm sure that how they were buried in the mud and stuff versus different areas had drastically affected how the bodies were preserved and stuff. And
they say the pH in the water was just perfect, and then of course finding somebody like this, you have to be so careful. Like here's an example of a grave being exposed, and they have to be so careful with not breaking any of these bones and making sure that you collect everything just the way it is, and so that you can study what happened to the individual and everything. And using, they had to use tiny little tools and stuff to get between these bones and clean them out and pick them up so they didn't misplace things. And it was a lot of work. A lot of work.
I'm sure they were probably. I mean, how many times had they gone back to? Really?
They went back 3 years in a row. They were then 1984, 5, and 6. They were back there.
Okay, because this doesn't look like it's an overnight kind of thing.
No,
It probably took years and years.
Very, very long, very tedious. And then they have to measure, all the bones and determine, what sex it is and what the age of it is and everything.
Now, did they realize, or did they ever find out, who they were?
They did not. But right now, there's a lawsuit going on with the Seminoles are suing the state of Florida for the return of these remains. They're claiming them to be their ancestry. And so we had some of these articles here that were on loan to us. These are artifacts that was found in the grave, and we had them here on display. And Florida State University came and collected everything, and they said they were going to all of the museums that they had loaned stuff out to and collecting them, because if the courts rule in the Seminoles' favor, then they want everything there to be able to say, here it is.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's one of those things.
But nobody at the time claimed any ownership of them and nothing, So at the time, they just figured that they're all over the country. There's lawsuits like this going on with different tribes, and these people are collecting them and then reburying them, and normally they rebury them where they were found. And so she believes that they will try to rebury them in Windover. That was her thoughts. So I don't know.
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's one of those things. It's a touchy subject.
Yeah,
You know.
and
it's-
they only excavated. I thought there used to be a map here, but I don't know if it's still here. But they only excavated about half of this pond. So the other half of the pond
It's left
was,
alone.
well, yeah, it's never been touched.
It's got to be
I thought
interesting.
there was
though.
something here at one time, but I don't see it now. It showed, you know, that they only excavated on like one half of the pond. So the other half of the pond could have another 200 or 300 people in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But-
you know, it's one. It's that's you never truly know. I mean,
Yeah.
and understandably, they're probably skeptical of wanting to do more. You know, it's
Well, it's very expensive. I mean, you've got a large crew of people there, and you're having to pay these archaeologists to be there, and then it's very expensive and time consuming, and so you know the money. Who's going to pay for this? And so yeah.
yeah, that's true. You know, and it's you never know. It's kind of hard to really navigate that whole thing. You know, and it's
Yeah.